It's not cool. Like, that needs to stop. Hello there, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. If you are new here, I'm Trixie and we hang out together every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. So today I wanted to jump on and talk about my solo Disney trip. Editing me. Before we get too far into today's video, I did just want to let you know that this video got a little away from me. My mind kind of wandered and I realized once I was editing what a big ramble this was. So I am going to be leaving timestamps down below in the description box so that if you are only here for certain things, you can check that out. Sort of a heads up. This is a question and answer sort of thing. First, I'm going to be talking about the travel questions that I got. Then I'm going to be talking about the things that I got asked about, like what was it like being alone at Disney? Did you feel safe? All of that. And then in my third portion of the video, I kind of go off on a ramble, not really a ramble, but I kind of go off on like other park guests and the things that I notice are happening now. Like the interactions between park guests and cast members and park guests and other park guests and things that I experience that just don't sit well with me. So if you want to watch this whole thing, that's great. But if you want to watch certain sections, that's fine too. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Okay, so back to the video. Because I really need to multitask today and film a video and get ready for work, I'm going to be doing my makeup as we talk about these things. If you are here not for makeup and you are just here to learn about my Disney trip, don't worry, I won't be talking about the products that I'm using on my face or anything. They will be listed down below though, but you can just listen to this, I guess like you would be listening to a podcast or something. So I went in June, towards the middle of June of this year, 2021, if you're watching this in the future. I went on my first ever solo Disney trip. I filmed it. I have the vlogs, the playlist down below. If you haven't checked it out, you really should because it was a fun trip. I stayed at 2 different resorts. I stayed at Copper Creek and Saratoga Springs. And so if you wanted like room tours, resort tours, things like that, that is down below in that playlist as well. So the reason that I did want to talk was because from those videos, I either commented or snuck over on Instagram and messaged me and asked me these questions. A lot of questions came up and pretty much a lot of the same questions came up. And so I just thought that I would sit down and answer those questions in today's video. It's my phone as my mirror to do my brows. So the first question, and really the question that I got a lot, what was it like traveling alone? So if you haven't checked out those videos, I live in Louisiana, so I flew from Louisiana to Florida, made a pit stop in Atlanta because you have to, if you're flying in the South, have to make a pit stop in Atlanta apparently, either there or North Carolina, like it's sort of the deal with airlines around here. I've actually flown by myself before, and I've flown to Orlando and I've flown to Paris by myself. It was just always, that part wasn't really new to me for this trip. It was always that I had flown by myself and met other people whenever I got to my destination. So that really wasn't bad. I love flying. I'm not a nervous flyer once I'm actually on the plane. The biggest thing for me is if I have to make a connection, I get really stressed out until I'm on the plane. I really get stressed out that I'm going to miss it or that I'm going to get lost in the airport. The only thing that I can really say about flying alone that I would just be aware of is like definitely always like be aware of your safety. I never really felt, because the airports were so crowded, I never really felt like I was alone, and that was sort of that's sort of the vibe that I got from the whole trip. I was traveling alone, and I was alone on the trip except for one day when a friend met up with me. But because I was always surrounded with crowds, I never felt like I was truly alone on the trip as far as like safety. I always felt like there were like safety in numbers just because there were so many people around me at all times. The only thing that really I would recommend, because this is what I got asked a lot of, like recommendations if you were flying alone, I would make sure that you knew where your next plane was going to be, like your next gate was going to be. It just takes a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the confusion out. And if you were flying with a certain airline, like I would definitely recommend that you download their app, at least for that trip, because that app will tell you exactly where I know, of course, what gate number like your ticket will, but the app should tell you exactly where that gate is. And so that really cut down for me a lot of the anxiety because I saw it on the plane as I was going, and I was able to see, okay, well, this is where I'm landing and this is my direct route to get to where I need to be. So that really helped with that. The only thing that I really do not like about flying alone is that you have to take your bag everywhere with you, right? Like you have to take your carry-on items with you if you are going to get something to eat or you're going to the bathroom or something like that. And that's just something to be aware of as well. If you are flying alone and you don't want to have to lug a lot of things, maybe travel lighter than I did. I traveled with a piece of luggage that I checked in, as well as a carry-on and a book bag. All of that was pretty much stuffed to the brim because I'm a chronic overpacker. So the stuff that I was lugging around the airport and to and from bathrooms and to and from getting food and stuff, it was all really heavy. So that was really my only concern. I do have another solo Disney trip coming up next year in 2022, and I'm hoping that's still my only concern with flying is just the luggage and getting from like point A to point B. But going still with sort of transportation, another question was about the transportation to and from the airport and with if it was doable by myself, etc. So to and from the airport, I'm not exactly sure. I took the Magical Express and I took it for the last time. Almost like magically someone buys me a trip before they get rid of the Magical Express. So that really was not an issue. I'm interested to see what's going to happen now that they are getting rid of the Magical Express. Like, I know that they are going to still keep the Mears shuttle, which Mears was the company that was doing the Magical Express. I know I could get like a taxi or an Uber or a rideshare or something like that, or rent a car, but that's like a stupidly expensive thing to do for like just one person, in my opinion, especially on property. So the reason that I think it's a stupidly expensive thing for me as one person to do is once I get to Disney property, I typically don't leave it. And so to me, there's no reason to have a car. Now, this, I know I was told that I should probably, they just recommend it. Some Disney friends that I have recommended that I should probably rent a car because Disney transportation was super slammed. They were only doing X amount of people of capacity. And I did notice that, but I never noticed that it really slowed things down. I think the longest that I had to wait for a bus was maybe 15 minutes. And to me, that's a normal thing. It was strange because when typically, under normal circumstances, Disney will like pack people on the bus, especially at park close. It was something that, because they couldn't do, there were longer lines than normal. I take that back. So I did say about 15 minutes. There was one day that I waited 45 minutes and another day I waited around an hour. But it was in the morning and I was at the resort. And there were a lot of people who at that time were calling Ubers because they were tired of waiting. And it was the way that that resort was structured. Saratoga Springs is huge and has so many bus stops for each of their areas of the resort. So that was something that was really the only time that I felt inconvenienced, was that I was waiting for that bus and I missed about an hour or so being at the park. So I don't know, that would kind of depend on a personal preference. I don't mind waiting up into a certain point for a bus or like a water taxi or a monorail or something. But if you were the type of person that even if you're staying on property, you don't, like you were a very like time is money sort of person and like a go, go, go sort of person, and you don't want to wait, you might want to get some sort of transportation. So either rent a car, just be comfortable with calling an Uber if you feel that the buses are taking too long. So I got a few questions about safety. Did I feel safe? Of course, traveling to and from, but did I feel safe once I was actually on property? And the answer is yes. I've always felt safe on Disney property. And I know that bad things can and have happened on Disney property, but I don't know, there was always, I kind of mentioned this when I talked about the airport, I always felt that there was a safety in numbers sort of deal while I was on property. There was really only one time that I was truly alone, and that was just sort of walking from where I ate back to my room to wash up before I went to the bus. And honestly, I really wasn't alone. There were not big groups of people, but there were joggers and people like playing golf and things like that. Like there were people always around and always there, whether that was big families or cast members or just somebody. There was always somebody who, wrong brush. Here we go. There was always somebody who was around. So as far as me going by myself and feeling safe, yeah, I definitely felt like there was a safety aspect there. As far as going in the times of COVID, I definitely felt that Disney did their best spacing and cleanliness and did their best to enforce the rules that they had put into place. I felt safer as far as health wise there with thousands of people than I did teaching in my classroom all of last year. So I feel like that is saying something. So if you were concerned about that, I mean, you have rational concerns, don't get me wrong. But as far as Disney going above and beyond to attempt to help address all those concerns, yeah, they really, really did a good job with that. And the last question that I really got a lot was it fun? Like, was it fun to go by myself and do things on my own? And yeah, it definitely was. So I've gone with friends, I've gone with my parents, and I've gone with just other people in general, other families, and don't get me wrong, I love going with other people. I love especially going to the Disney parks with my parents. They're Disney fans as I am. They are the main reason that I am this way, that I'm doing my makeup while wearing a Dynaco sweatshirt. You know, like they really instilled that love for Disney. I did have a fun time going on my own. There was always something to occupy you. If you've never been to Disney World or you're thinking of planning a solo trip and you're concerned about this, you can have as much or as little downtime as you would like. And if you are a person who wants to be at the parks from sunup to sundown, they definitely have enough that you could do that. I never once on the trip felt bored, like at all felt bored. Not even whenever I would just go back into the room to sort of cool off because it was hot and like the heat was making me go a little crazy. Not even during that time when I was just chilling in the room by myself watching some TV. I never felt bored. That's something though that I've never felt bored, period, while I'm at Disney, just because there's always something to do. Being alone at Disney made me hyper aware of certain things. And I guess it's because there was nobody there like while I was waiting in line to talk to me and distract me from things. So here's a few things, and this is sort of where I'm going to get off topic, but not really, because I did get asked some questions about this from people in my real life who knew I had been multiple times before this trip. And that was a like, hey, what did you notice was different about Disney this time? And some of them were asking like in a scope of traveling alone, what did you notice was different? But some were also asking like, hey, what did you notice was different now that Disney has opened back up again? And I know it's been over a year since Disney has opened back up, and my experience may not be everyone else's experience. So I just do want to preface this by saying that a lot of what I'm going to be talking about as far as cast members is based on my knowledge of me being a former cast member. Things may not be the same as far as trainings and traditions and stuff, but there are some things that I experienced while I was there that as a former cast member that knows what the company expects versus what was actually happening really didn't sit well with me. So let's just talk about these things. And with all of these things, I do want to hear what you have to say in the comments down below, definitely. So the first thing that I noticed was that a lot of the cast members didn't have the show about them. Like, I'm not being down on the cast members who are there because I know that they have to go through a lot of stressors. Like, it was very clear that the Disney parks were severely understaffed. And it was also clear that some of the people who were working, they had been switched over from, say, like entertainment to like merchandise or something. And they were just learning how to do all of that. So like on top of that, they also had to deal with extremely rude park guests, which we'll get into in just a moment. But so I know that the cast members had a lot going on. But like when I was there, and I remember specifically, I was on Main Street and I was purchasing something, and the cast members didn't even talk to me. They just took my things. They were just ringing up my purchases. And that, like, one, you're supposed to make conversation, but that's fine. Like, you don't want to make conversation, that's cool. That's okay. Like, whatever. But then they started talking about the new, which now we know of as Delta, but the new COVID strain that was coming, and how they were sure that it was going to impact the park and that, they would probably lose their jobs and XYZ. And that sort of thing happened like 3 times on the trip, like 3 times max on the trip. But it was enough that like it took me completely out. Like whenever I go to Disney World, I 100% exist in that Disney bubble. I don't really watch the news unless something really big is happening. I try not to get too much on social media just because I want to live, like that is my escape for me. I want to live in that utopian world the Disney parks has created. That's one of the reasons that I love going to Disney. It's not so much like it's like that like saccharine sweet Pollyanna sort of atmosphere, but just that like this is the way that the world should be sort of atmosphere. And that may not make sense to others, but that's how I feel whenever I go to Walt Disney World. It's a place that all my problems just like pin them on a board and not have to worry about them while I'm on property. So hearing them talk about that completely took me out of the whole atmosphere. And that was strange to me because I also know, like as a former cast member, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to talk about real life things on stage. Another thing that was very different but I actually loved, Disney had no fast pass services. And I actually, with the exception of one ride, which was Pirates, I actually felt like that sped up the lines so much more. It was crowded. I did have to wait in long lines because they were socially distancing us. But overall, I loved that we were all waiting in the same line. That was okay with me. I found the lines went by much quicker. And this is kind of going off on something else. This is a very rambling video and I apologize, but I don't mind that they're not bringing fast passes back. I know that a lot of people have their undies in a twist over that, but I truly don't care because I never really liked the whole fast pass system to begin with. So that was good. That was fun. But while I was waiting in line and I was waiting by myself, I was able to really pay attention. And this is what I mean by, it might be that I was just hyper aware because I was by myself. I was able to really hear what people were saying. And a lot of people, and this was just honestly on my first day. I got this my whole first day actually. A lot of people seemed disturbed that I was there as an adult by myself, specifically as I was waiting in line for rides in Fantasyland. Like that I was taking up space. And so that's something that you might want to be aware of. If you are traveling alone, you might have people make comments and they think that you can't hear them. I'm used to people making comments about me though, and I just ignore them. A lot of the comments like in Fantasyland had to do with the fact that I was there alone without kids and that I was just, well, I should be somewhere else. I should be at some other park. I was taking up space in the line. Now, this is no new concept of people my age. I am one of those childish millennial Disney adults who is the reason that your kid doesn't get to meet Mickey and doesn't get their Mickey pretzel. If you don't get that reference, I will leave that article in the description box down below so you can get that reference. But yeah, so that was something that I experienced specifically on my first day. Something though that I experienced on my first day, and it got worse as the trip went on. And this is something that I feel like we need to have a huge discussion about. Like, this is something that I just feel like this needs to be discussed. The rudeness of these park guests. Now, there were some park guests that were completely perfectly fine and they were normal and it was all great. But the rudeness of so many park guests towards each other, towards cast members, stunned me to no end. Because I was traveling alone, a lot of times, if there was only like one seat on the bus left or one seat on a ride left, I got that seat. And there were a lot of people who did not like that at all. I cursed out a few times while I was there. And like, hey, it's not my fault. It's not my issue. Like, why are you coming at me? And then also the amount of people who were so mean to the cast members. Like, I had some mean guests in my time with the company, but this was like out of this world mean. yelling at them, calling them names, all of these horrible things. Like, once again, takes the magic completely out of other people's vacation. And that's something that I noticed. I had sort of been noticing on past trips, but something that I noticed specifically with this trip. Everyone seemed to be on their own vacation, and it was their vacation and nobody else's. And so they were the only important person there. And so if they didn't get something that they felt they were entitled to, they completely lost their damn mind about it. And so there was a lot of yelling from guests on this trip. There was a lot of pouting. If I would have gotten a nickel for every time guests complained that they had to wait in line, or complained that Disney actually enforced the fact that they had to wear masks and socially distance, or complained about the heat. Like, you go to Florida in the middle of the summer, like, what do you expect? I could well have paid for another trip. Like, that's how much yelling and complaining I heard on this trip. It's not cool. Like, that needs to stop. Like I said, I don't know if it's because I was there alone or just because that's the way people are now. Another thing that I did notice, speaking of that's the way people are, there were so many people in Epcot specifically who were just like, and I even mentioned this in my last Epcot day video, it was day 5, I think. Like, as the day progressed, they were becoming like white girl wasted, like messy, sloppy wasted. Just overall created a really weird atmosphere for the park. So like, in the future, as long as that continues, World Showcase might be a morning for me, but not an evening sort of thing. Just because I didn't like the atmosphere that it created. It felt like a very Bourbon Street sloppy atmosphere / carnival atmosphere. And that's just not, like, once again, that's not what Disney World should be like. So yeah, so those were the things that I noticed. Like I said, I'm not sure if it's just the times we're living in that people feel, I know in general, I'm noticing, like, in real life, as I'm sure you are too, people feel like they are more entitled to being able to do whatever they want at whatever time they want. So I don't know if that's just carrying over into theme parks and vacations and that atmosphere as well, not just real life, but if it was just because I was alone, I was noticing all of these things for the first time, or just like noticing them more. Do I still absolutely love going to Disney World? Yes. When things sort of get quote unquote back to normal a little more, I am interested to see what it's going to look like there. I'm also interested to hear if you've gone to the Disney parks recently, what your experience was. Please let me know, or let all of us know, all like 10 people I'm sure who are going to watch this. Let us know that in the comments down below. And if you have any trips coming up in the future, whether they're solo trips or family vacations, and you have any questions or you would like any tips or advice, because this was a little more of a Q&A sort of thing. If you have more questions or you would like some tips, leave that in the comments down below as well, and I will answer you, and maybe those answers and tips can help you with an upcoming Disney trip. If you sat through this ramble, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. You've already sat through this, so you might as well hit that subscribe button. If you do, I would be very grateful if you would like to share this video out with somebody who might be interested in hearing what I have to say about my solo Disney trip and what I think about Disney parks now. I greatly appreciate that as well. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with me. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in another video. Goodbye.